Chapter 37 of Just Stories, The Kind That Never Grow Old by Winfrid HERBST, STS. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Maria Therese. Madonna, Della, Sedia. Many, many years ago, in a hidden valley between towering mountains, there lived a pious and aged hermit. Out in the big world he'd been sorely tried. He had met with many reverses. And finally he had sought this solitude in order to devote his remaining days to undisturbed prayer. But was he really undisturbed? No, indeed. People heard of his saintly life and came to him from far and near, for they wished to hear his words of heavenly wisdom and consolation. And not one but left him with a lighter heart, the light of sorrow lifted, joyfully resigned to the holy will of God. That is why, in all the country round, people venerated the holy old man as a saint, as one very near and dear to God. Now, though this pious hermit had left the world, his heart yet felt the need of love and affection for some creature, which love, of course, was subordinate to the love of God. Hence he used to say, "Here in my solitude I still have two children, one that speaks and one that is dumb." What did he mean? Why, one of his so-called children was Marie, the little daughter of a neighboring well-to-do vintner. And she could speak. She thought the world of the dear old hermit and often visited him in his lonely hermitage, walking alone through the deep dark forests and playing silently and in sweet simplicity in the old man's company. She was glad to be near him. He was so good. But you could never guess who his other child was. It was a tall, beautiful oak tree that stood beside his hut and overshadowed and protected it with its powerful branches. It, of course, was dumb. Now, the hermit loved Marie in her innocent childish prattle. He taught her many things about the wonders and beauties of nature and of nature's God, and in her little heart he planted many a seedlet of rarest virtue and goodness. On the other hand, he loved the silent oak tree, too. Many a time did he carry water for its thirsty roots in the rainless seasons of summer. He fed and protected the birds that lived in its shady branches, and again did he save its life when the axe of the woodman threatened. One year there was an unusually long and severe winter. Deep, deep snow covered the mountainsides. Then in the spring there came a sudden thaw. Within a few days all the snow was changed to water, and in the wild torrents the water rushed down the mountainsides into the valley where the hermit lived. "Alas, alas for our dear old saintly hermit!" Marie's father said one morning. "I fear he is no more. The mountain torrents have rushed through his valley, and the trees are covered with the swelling waters almost to their tops." You can imagine how Marie cried. "Oh, Father!" she exclaimed. "Hasten to help him!" But it was evidently too late. Nothing could be done, for surely by this time the foaming water was already rushing over the roof of his little hut. And yet he was saved. His two children, the one that was dumb and the one that spoke, they saved him. Yes, for the staunch oak tree still held its wide-spreading branches over the water. When the flood came, the aged hermit had fled to the roof of his hut, and when the waters reached him even there, he bravely climbed into the branches of his beloved oak. Other trees around were torn out by the roots and carried away, but the oak tree stood firm. 3 days passed before the water abated. For 3 days the venerable old man had to cling to the branches of the tree, with nothing to eat but a little dry bread that he had hastily put into his pocket when he had fled to the roof of his hut. On the morning of the 4th day he climbed down from the faithful oak tree. Utterly exhausted, he sank upon the moist earth and awaited death. But then his other child came, the one that could speak, his little Marie. She had had no rest at home, and as soon as she could, she hastened through the wet and slimy woods to search for her beloved hermit. There she found him on the ground, almost dead from hunger and exposure and fatigue. Quickly she knelt down at his side and opened the basket of food and drink that she had brought along. Tenderly she threw her arms about his neck and drove death away. How grateful that hermit was to God! He spoke seemingly inspired words over his two children, through whom God had so wondrously saved him. Solemnly he begged the Almighty to reward them by glorifying them beyond other creatures of the earth. Then he went home with Marie and remained at her father's house until he was strong enough to return to his hermitage. Years passed. In rare holiness and beauty, Marie grew into womanhood. The hermit went home to God. His hut fell to decay. The oak tree was cut down and made into large wine barrels, which Marie's father bought. But where was the blessing the holy hermit had called down upon his two children? For instance, was not the wood of the oak tree now mouldering in damp cellars? Ah, just wait! It was nearly harvest time, and one of the wine casks, being empty, was brought up from the cellar and placed on the lawn in front of the house, in order that new hoops might be driven on around it. And that same morning Marie, who was now happily married and the mother of two lovely boys, came out to enjoy the fragrant air, just as the sun was rising over the hills. There she sat on a chair in a green arbor, caressing her baby boy on her breast, while the older boy stood at her side. She was so happy! And as she gazed toward the distant valley where once the dear hermit had lived, she thought that surely these two darling boys were the blessing that he had asked for her. Just then, all absorbed in his own thoughts, a young man passed by. It was Raphael Sanzio, the greatest artist of all times. He had long been outlining in his mind a picture of the Mother of God with the child Jesus, but he could not represent the forms to himself in a manner that satisfied him. He was taking this walk just to concentrate his thoughts on the picture again. As he approached, Marie spoke a gentle word of greeting. He looked up. What a picture, this mother and her children! The very thing he had been dreaming of. Why, here was the mother from whose almost holy features the purest, holiest love shone forth. Here in her arms was an angel child whose large, friendly eyes gazed wondrously at the world around him. And here, too, was the older boy, bearing a little staff to which he had fastened a cross. What a living picture of rarest earthly beauty! Raphael quickly begged for permission to paint it on the spot. He would preserve it for all time to come. But he had nothing at hand except his drawing pencil. He looked around. Ah, there was the large flat bottom of the barrel that we know had been made of the beloved oak tree. Eagerly the great artist sketched Marie and her children on that smooth, flat surface. Then, with due permission, he took the bottom out of the cask and carried it home. And he had no rest day and night until from that first draught he had completed a wondrous picture of the Mother of God, with the child Jesus on her breast, and with little John the Baptist bringing him a cross, as though already in play he would accustom the Christ child to the symbol of our redemption. Raphael Sanzio of Urbino died in 1520, long centuries ago, but his picture, Madonna Della Sedia, Our Lady of the Chair, is still cherished as a sacred treasure the world over. It will never die. Thus was the hermit's prayer answered. Art has glorified his two dear children. The wood of the beloved oak tree bears the image of Marie and her children, and for centuries still to come their pure and lovely features will thrill and charm the hearts of the good and will raise them to heaven itself, for they were used as models to show, as best the artist's brush can, the beauty of Jesus and Mary and the great St. John. End of chapter 37.